Good Tuesday to you, everybody in Com 651. Welcome to week, boom, bam, 15. You have almost made it to the end. Second to last week. Folks, you got this. All right. Welcome to this week's video. We're going to do a couple of things. We'll talk about what's coming in this week and the last week. And then we'll review your answers to the questions from week 14. Okay, so let's start with the end first. All right. So this is our second to last week of class. All right. Strangely enough, class officially ends on Saturday, May 3rd. Okay. So today's the 22nd. Next week is the 29th. That is, last week wraps up on Saturday. Okay. Looking ahead to that week. All right. Your fourth PR presentation, your plan is due on that in that week on the 30th. All right. I have graded and given comments to all of you for if your draft that is part 3. So remember, what you're doing now is you're turning the draft into excuse me, the final plan. And I'm over whatever it was I picked up on my travels. But I've got a little, I think a little bronchitis. Just the chest is sore from cough, and that sort of stuff. So if I need to clear my throat or take a little drink of water, I am sufficiently caffeinated. Please forgive me. Anyway, so look closely at the comments that I made on part 3. That is your draft. If I could identify areas in general that everyone should be focusing on, there would be 3. First and foremost, the whole thrust of this class has been how research is the foundation for public relations, how good data drives what it is that you say and what it is that you do. If you sketch out a plan for backcountry, if you diagnose an issue for backcountry, be sure that you have the data to back it up. If you say, I've made specific comments to you, and I have a suggestion. I think still one more of you that I say, hey, why don't we talk, that I haven't heard from you. So if you see that, in the general comments, the concluding comments, get in touch with me. For anybody, if you want to talk, I'm available. But anyway, if you say, we're going to aim at this demographic, or we're going to launch this type of campaign, and you say, diversity, inclusion, and these sorts of things, make sure that you supply the data which shows that that's a market in which backcountry can increase their sales, because that's ultimately the bottom line. So if you diagnose a main problem, have the data to back it up. If you recommend a direction, have the data to back it up. So that's the first sort of overall, comment for everybody. Make sure that you're underpinning whatever you say is wrong and or you're going to do with data. Okay. Number 2, when you're sketching out your plan, and number 2 is connected to number 1, using the data. And by the way, especially when you're dealing with companies and marketplaces, there are a number of data sources that are behind paywalls. I don't expect you to pay for anything. I mean, if you want to, and they're usually fairly inexpensive. I mean, some of them actually, depending on the level of analysis you get, can be quite expensive. But there's a lot of freebie stuff out there. Okay. So when you use the data, be sure that you look at both sides. That is, don't say, well, we're gonna hit this demographic because this little bit of the data says. Well, look at the rest of the data. If you say, well, our new target is this demographic, Okay, well, what portion of the total market is that demographic that you're targeting? Because if it's like 2, 3%, 5%, 6%, 7%, that's not a place where you're going to grow what it is that this company needs by public relations, by means of its public relations. So don't just look for the stuff data wise that confirms what you'd like to do. Look at both sides, pros and cons, and look to see what's working by way of data. I was talking with somebody about this yesterday during my office hour, and I said that you can see this is where companies get into trouble. And one of the examples that leapt to mind was, I just got to be about maybe 4 or 5 years back. Starbucks, the company, the corporation, decided it would be a good idea to initiate a program in which their baristas, the people making the coffee and the people at the counter, were encouraged to start conversations about race with the customers in line. Now, unless this was just somebody's wild late night pizza fueled fever dream, there must have been some data there. I said, well, X amount of our customers have expressed this as a concern in terms of a social issue. So let's start talking about it. Okay. It was an absolute train wreck for the company. And the reason being is that although whatever percentage, and I don't have the numbers because they didn't release it, but whatever percentage of data, whatever data they had that showed the percentage of customers that wanted, the company to be addressing issues of race, paled in comparison to the amount of customers, the data that showed that what people really want when they go into a Starbucks is the coffee. And what they don't want is to stand in line while someone in front of them has a back and forth with the server, with the barista, about a topic not related to getting the coffee. And not only did they very quickly scrap the program, it caused some real rows and ruckus. And in this age of social media, where everybody walks around like this all the time, there were a number of videos posted of they weren't conversations, they were shouting matches over this topic. All right, so weigh out the pros and cons. Don't just decide, oh, okay, this is what they need to be doing because this is what I think the marketplace needs to be doing. Okay, look at both sides of the data. That's number 2. Make sure you back it up with data. Make sure you've looked at both sides. And then number 3, remember to keep the main thing the main thing. That is the purpose of this entire PR campaign, is to pull Backcountry's bacon out of the fire. This is a company that is in financial trouble. Why are they in financial trouble? Because their sales have been tanking. The bottom line of the PR campaign is to make more money for the company by way of increasing sales. So if you now I'm going to mention something, and the person I talked to, I already talked to this about, so I'm not picking on you. I'm just using this as an example. If you say, oh, the way we're going to fix this is put in a buyback program that is with, people can resell their gear that they bought from Backcountry. Well, okay. Well, how effective is buyback going to be by way of revenue if they're not selling the stuff in the first place? That's the problem. They're not selling the stuff. All right. So keep the main thing the main thing. And the main thing is, how is it that this company is going to make more money? All right. So if you have a note on there specifically asking that you reach out to me, please do. Anybody, anytime, you can reach out if you want to talk. All right. So those are due on the 30th. Okay. Your final exam. I will post, and I'll put this in the written announcement, so put this on your calendar. I will post the final exam at midnight on Friday, May the 2nd. Okay? You'll have all, if you stay up Thursday night and the clock strikes 12:01 and it's midnight, then you'll see the exam. And then you'll have all of Friday, okay? And then all of Saturday, because I'll close the exam at 11:59 p.m. on Saturday, May the 3rd. You'll have that entire time to complete the exam. It's worth 22% of your grade. It'll be a combination of true, false, multiple choice, and short answer. Okay. Excuse me. Please follow the instructions that you'll see on the exam very carefully. Specifically, you will see that you're instructed to open the exam in Canvas and then close every other tab in your browser. And when you begin the exam, do not, under any circumstance, navigate out of that tab. Stay, but don't check your email. Don't do anything. Okay? I hate to do this, but I mean, I even hate to address it, but I'm gonna have to. You should know, if you don't know, that when you're online, I mean, you're like standing out in the public square without your clothes on. Everybody sees you. Somebody is gathering data on you. Somebody is tracking what you're doing to one extent or the other, depending on what sort of things you're engaged in. But it's this sort of this illusion of personal space and privacy, but it's really not. Okay. And that's just how programs are designed, and Canvas is no exception. Canvas tracks what you're doing when you're doing something in Canvas and sends me a report. Canvas tells me how long you are working on a question. It tells me if you look at other things. I have the option as your instructor to activate your webcam and watch what you do while you take the exam. All right. And I'm not going to tell you whether you're, going to be watched or what sort of things I'm looking at in terms of what you're doing. Because imagine that we were in a classroom. I mean, we remember that, right? Sitting in a classroom some point in our history. And I handed you an exam. You should no more be looking at other sources, and I'm talking about on your phone or anything else, or navigating anywhere else or looking at another screen. You should no more be doing that than you would just like taking notes out of your book and looking at it while you're answering an exam in a classroom, or getting up from your seat and going out the door and disappearing and then coming back some minutes later and sitting down and getting up and going out, sitting down, getting up, going out, sitting down, getting up, going out during the course of the exam. Because I, as the instructor, or you as the instructor, for those of you who have students, would say, what are you doing? It's the same online. All right. So follow the instructions carefully. One tab, nothing else, no notes, no internet, no nothing. Okay. All right. Because if the report shows otherwise, then you'll get a 0 for that exercise. And if you get a 0 on the final exam, you're probably going to fail the class. And I don't even want to have those conversations. All right, because you've all worked so hard. So keep it up. Keep up the good work. Okay, so that's coming up for next week. All right, this week, no more discussion questions. Woohoo! Okay. If you take a look at the module of week 15, all right, what I've done is I've pulled some terms, mostly from, actually exclusively from Stacks. The readings in Scott, use the readings. If you have any questions about how to put together your final PR plan, Scott, she has some good suggestions for you in chapter 13. All right. So for this week, what I've done is I've pulled some key terms from chapters 15 and 16 in Stacks, And I've simply listed them in an item in the pinned discussion, something that says terms. All right. You don't have to write a response to these. You don't have to have a discussion if you don't want to. If you want to, say, oh, hey, does somebody find out what this means? And I think it means, and that's great. Otherwise, be able to, quickly and clearly and just plain simple English, imagine that you're writing an answer to me. You're talking to like a 3-year-old or a golden retriever or something, just very simple English, just a description, a definition of these terms, or be able to identify them and write about them in some functional context. Okay, so if I said, is this statement true or false? You would use a chi-square test to blah blah blah. You'd go, okay, yeah, I know what a chi-square test is, and that's true. Or I know what a chi-square test is, and that's false. Okay, so understand the terms. Don't simply write out a definition. Come to an understanding of what they are and be able to describe that or define that, because they might appear on the final exam. Oh, wink. Okay. All right. So that's what we're going to do for this week. Very simple, very straightforward. All righty. Let's take a look at what you said, what you did last week. See if we can shed any light on this to help you in your final days here in the class. Question number 1, concerning causation in quantitative research, define, explain, and give examples with a link of each of the following: variable, covariation, causation, and control. Okay, there's, the only wrong answer for this as well. The wrong answer. Let's see, you're at the top, which means you went last. Hillary, let's take you. Variable is a data item that can be counted or measured. It can be numeric or categorical. The following examples of variables mapped out in a flowchart. Yeah, a variable is anything that you're trying to measure. Anything. It could be an event. It could be, the number of toothpicks in a container. A variable is something that you are measuring, and you really only encounter a variable when you're measuring this one against this one, or the term is used in that context. Okay, so meaning the variable of how much ink is left in this Sharpie would be related to how dark would be the line if I started writing with it again. Okay, so the darkness of the line would be a variable, and the amount of ink in the Sharpie would be a variable. Okay, so it's just a thing you're trying to measure. Okay, let's see. Covariation. Unlike correlation, which is measured, covariation is a relationship between two variables that is gauged, where one variable increases or decreases, the other variable increases or decreases. Okay, good answer. The example of a positive covariation would be that as the number of hours spent studying increases, the higher the grade of the student. So in other words, covariation is the definition of the relationship of one variable to another. Okay, or, and this can also be true, you can have two things causing one thing, and these two things could be described as covariance because they are, like together, like cooperate, stuff like that. Okay, good. Let's see. Causation provides a cause and effect relationship by conducting controlled experiments, which eliminates a correlative and covariant relationships that may not necessarily indicate direct cause and effect. Okay. And again, now a good answer, but try to, in your mind, put this in very, very simple terms. All right. Ultimately, what you're after, especially for PR, is causation. This makes this happen. And you want to distinguish that from correlation. This and this happen at the same time, but is the one causing the other. Remember the example that I gave you about ice cream sales and shark attacks, okay, or encounters with sharks, okay? And then finally, control in an experiment are variables that remain constant throughout the research design in order to establish internal validity to the research results. Examples given in the YouTube video below consist of researchers testing whether or not vitamin D increases alertness. To establish internal validity, his results, he ensured that there is a control group that is given the placebo All groups in the study are allotted the same diet, timing, meal, etc. Okay, good. Good answer. So control means, look, so if you wanted to, if you know, talk about marketing, if you wanted to find out, you're designing a new media campaign for backcountry, and you want to find out if, you know, images of people doing certain things like skiing as opposed to bicycling, as opposed to sitting down on a picnic blanket in the forest, as opposed to driving up a mountain road. Which of those images increased people clicking through to a website? All right, so you would pick one. Let's start with say people skiing, and you would show a group video of people skiing. All right, and then have a voiceover. You know, backcountry gets you out there, whatever your tagline is. All right. Well, the way that you know that this does or doesn't have an effect is you put also a control group, which is a group that doesn't see the video but just has the tagline, okay, or sees what backcountry already has and not the new video, because you want to be able to distinguish a change in behavior. Well, the question is a change from what? What's the baseline? What's happening? So in the example that Hillary gives, giving of vitamin D, okay, does giving of vitamin D help anybody? Well, how do we know? Well, let's take this group and give them vitamin D, and then we take this group and we tell them that we give them vitamin D, but we just give them sugar pills. And then we measure any sort of changes in the health of this group and the changes in the health of this group. And if this group, the one that got the vitamin D, has significant changes, then we know that vitamin D is having an effect, because over here, the control, this is the group that didn't get the thing. All right, so good answer. Okay, question number 2. Explain the difference between pre-experimental design and true experimental design. Link an example for each. Okay, Valerie, let's do you. True experimental design. A true experimental design is a comprehensive research framework that encompasses participants are assigned randomly to either experimental control groups, manipulation of independent variables, control of external variables. Okay, and then that's true. Okay, so you did this in reverse order. Okay. Pre-experimental design is basically an exploratory design that lacks random assignment, often lacks a control group, offers minimal control over threats to validity. Okay, good answer. So, you know, to put, you know, and be able to put this into real simple terms. Okay. Sometimes you'll run a pre-experimental design when you have a hunch. You know, you think there might be a there. You think something might be effective, might be a factor. So you run a very small study. You know, you don't have a control group, you don't have a large sample size. But if it's like ka-ching, I mean, you know, it'd be like if there was a causation between eating ice cream and shark attacks. Okay, you go, that seems like it is. So you would just take a small group of people and say, hey, why don't you eat a whole bunch of ice cream before you go swimming? And if every one of those persons were attacked by a shark, you go, wow, you know, that could be just random, or it could be that people that eat ice cream are really attractive to sharks. Let's design a full-blown study. Okay, so pre-experimental designs are ways to run down a hunch, see if there's actually anything there. They're good to identify problems, you know, issues in how people behave, how they answer certain questions, when you're thinking about the full experiment, the full design. Okay. Question 13. Answer the following question. How does experimental method enhance public relations? Okay. This could be the question that defines the course. Jamar, you're right at the top here. Let's take you. The experiment is the only way that we can definitely test whether something actually causes change in something else. Precisely. In other words, public relations is the business of noting how it is that people behave when you do certain things. And do can mean say, release, not say, not release, change, not change, whatever it is that you do. That's the whole business. is finding out how the one thing causes the other. And the only way to do that is with an experimental design. Okay. So really, you could sum up the entire course by saying, the heart of public relations is the pursuit of experimental methodology, or the execution experimental methodology, whatever you like. Okay. All right, everybody. Last, week of work, and then next week it's all yours to finish your fourth PR plan and study for your exams. I'll give you that space. Okay. If you have any questions, send them to me. If you need to talk, I'm holding office hours. Otherwise, I'm thinking about you. I'm praying about you, and I know each and every one of you are going to do just fine. Okay. See you on Canvas. Bye-bye.